All right, may I have a motion that the closed meeting be closed and that the board certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting to which the certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Now, if you all would stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
Yes, tonight we have, because of a lot of issues related to weather, had to, several persons who we would ordinarily recognize who are not available to come tonight, so we will not have any special recognitions. I'll move right on into the superintendent's report and information items that we have. In your packages, you have information for requests for overnight field trips that have been made by programs in our schools that you will be voting on. If you have any questions, you can ask about that. You can ask now or later, but I think they're self-explanatory. I will ask that Mr. Jeffers come up to talk with you about the comprehensive school board objectives that go with the comprehensive plan that we have at this point. So if Mr. Jeffers is available.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have a hard copy, and you had also received in your packet a request for action, adoption of the objectives by the MCPS School Board. As we brought before you last month, you spent a lot of time and energy last year developing your vision and mission and doing that work. This year we are working to build the comprehensive plan as directed by your policy, and in order to complete that plan, we need to have objectives to build our measures around. So we've had 2 meetings of the Comprehensive Plan Development Committee, and through the work of those 2 meetings so far, we have created what you see before you, objectives 1 through 6, and we ask that you consider those further. I know you've already looked at them previous to tonight, but if you consider these, and we'd ask, I think, later on the agenda for the adoption of these so we may continue the Development Committee's work.
Does anybody have any questions?
Excuse me, Mr. Jeffers, who served on that committee?
The committee so far is mainly the central office. We have, so myself, Mr. Nichols, all the principals that are in the room tonight and those that aren't present as well, and 2 school board members. We invited the chair and the vice chair to serve in this initial version. So we have about 23 people, I think, is the total, and as to this point.
There will even be community representatives, parents and whatnot.
Yes.
In the overall plan.
We have solicited the names from each school as the teacher of the year. The senior high schools will each have 1 student that'll also be a part of the group, and we're going to call that the Comprehensive Plan Development Review Committee. So once we develop the strategic worksheets to go under each of these objectives, then we're going to submit the entire work over 2 different meetings with a group of teachers, students, parents, and community leaders that have been designated by our schools. That's about another 20, I think it's about another 35 people. So it'll total be about 50-something people before it comes back to you, and our timeline, hopefully our timeline to present back to the board and the initial draft of the comprehensive plan will be in January.
And I might also add, we mentioned at the beginning of the year that part of our new accountability process is the whole issue of each school setting goals for the year and then looking to meet those goals. And the goal setting process should be inclusive of this comprehensive plan. So as we work through this plan, that piece will be built into that part and brought back to you.
And I could just real briefly, you see 6 very clean objectives, and this was kind of brought to a process, and we looked at the vision adopted, the mission was adopted, and said, if we were to capture the pieces that are most essential to do the work that you've set forward in your vision, what would those be? And that's where you see each of those objectives and do there. They're very straightforward. These are the objectives that we will develop strategies and measurements for. So we'll have metrics for each of these, and that's what will come for you in the final document for the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As
Mr.
we do
Nichols-
every month, we
Mr.
have,
Nichols, there was an item before that one. Were you going to say something about overnight field trips?
yes, well, I mentioned that you have information, I believe, in your packages
all
about
right.
that. And
That's all we
you
need on that.
will be voting on that. There was, as with every month, the VSBA policy update that would be brought. We do that each month, and you vote on it the next month. And Ms. Alga has this month's policy updates to bring to your attention.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, and Mr. Nichols. I don't have any specific updates for you this evening, but I did want to update you with what the administrative team is doing here with regard to policy manual. We've expanded our team, so it's Mr. Jeffers, Dr. Scales, Ms. Rogers, and me. And as the policy updates come from the VSBA, we'll be reviewing those so that each of us with our own specific areas of expertise will be able to present something to you that more than just one set of eyes has had an opportunity to review. So we'll be looking at that along with any regulations that need to accompany those policies and bring that to you as they come. Anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alga. School schedule update. We have found with all of the days already missed this year because of severe weather with the 2 hurricanes that we have missed more days already than we have banked that would be counted for the first semester of school. And as you will remember, from last year's scenario and working with teachers at the Teacher Advisory Committee and polling the teachers who were very anxious about the amount of time that we had for students in school compared to what was considered or being used and placed with other schools around us, there was a request to minimize that time, and I brought that request to you with my recommendation to work with them on that. But the fact is, we simply don't have enough time built into the calendar for fall semester to meet and be in compliance with the state recommendations and state mandates. And there have been some questions, I know, about other ways that we might be able to do this other than to add 20 minutes back to the calendar. But the reality is, by just taking out what days we have built in the first semester, we won't be able to be in compliance. And so I have taken the steps to communicate to a way to do that. Adding the 20 minutes back in will put us in a position that we should be good for the semester. I'm making that recommendation. We can just do it, but I would like to have the board's vote on that tonight as well, and you will see that as an action item tonight. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Nichols, is it your recommendation that we continue that for the rest of the school year?
I have to be very concerned about what weather we will continue to have throughout the spring of the year. And I would recommend that we continue that through the rest of the year as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Nichols, adding the 20 minutes back to the day for the rest of the year, how many total instructional hours would that give the county?
Mr. Jeffers, you've been working on some of that. Do you have that at the top of your? Okay, if you would, we'll get that answer. Other questions?
Nope.
We had just off the top of my head, there is an issue from last year that we have and other schools I think have been considering for a long time, that for the secondary level, they were counting the minutes between classes as part of instructional time. And since we had our issue last year that we asked the Department of Education for the opportunity to count the days that we had built in for second semester when we had the late April snow. That was considered by them as part of the decision-making as well. Since that time, there have been apparent changes at the department's level in what they consider to be instructional time. And that change was capitalized on or brought to significant fore when another school was actually cited for lack of appropriate instructional time during the school year. And we don't want to run into that scenario. And so the 5 minutes in between, we had to pull out. Whereas we thought we had 4 days each semester built in, having taken off the 20 days, we now have 2 days built in. So by adding the 20 minutes back in, we are adding a number of days that, as I understand it at this point, we're getting back to a total of 6 days for first semester and a total of 6 days for second semester. And we've missed 6 days in first semester.
Okay.
Any other questions? And we'll get you the specific data when he calculates it and brings it back in. Yes. Item E, the new secondary school building project update. The Joint Education Committee that includes both members of our board and members of the Board of Supervisors met, and we had some significant conversation at that meeting about roofs. There has been a concern expressed based on roofs that were historically in our school system as well as others, that flat roofs with a film on top of them and rocks on top of those leak. And so as we have had early conversations about the roofs, it was specifically requested that we not have any flat roofs. And as the architects have worked on our plans so far, they have not included any flat roofs. They have had most of the roof system over the academic buildings, which are basically a hallway and 2 classrooms wide, that could have a metal sharp sloped roof on top of them put in place. But there are areas over the auditorium and over the cafeterias where the amount of space that has to be covered by the roofs is so large that to put the full metal roofs on top of them would amount to a considerable addition of cost and a considerable addition of concern when we have heavy downpours of rain or snow, as we've had so far this year. And so instead of putting the full slanted metal roofs over those areas, they put a slight slant with the film on top of them that has 30 or even up to 40-year warranty on them. We wanted to be sure that everyone knows that even though you might look at them overhead and think of them as flat, that these are not flat roofs. They do have a gentle slope, and they would be available. They would actually be less expensive, even in long-term costs, and they will be roofs that when we do have significant weather, they will not produce as much power in rain as what we currently have now. The power of rain coming off of the roofs has already been evident, as we saw at Bluestone Middle School, where so much rain came down it actually pushed a 10,000-gallon tank out of the ground as the water ran through. So the school board, the Board of Supervisors Joint Education Committee did ask that we bring that to the attention of the full Board of Supervisors, and we did that at the last Board of Supervisors meeting. And they made some recommendations, but of course made it be known that it's this board that makes the decisions on what takes place with the building of the new school. So I'm reporting as that we have that, and we will probably continue to have Joint Education Committee meetings for updates from what we've got going on every quarter, is what they're recommending. And I know that Mr. Palmer was at that joint education meeting. I don't know, do you have anything you wanted to add to that, Mr. Palmer?
No, I think that was
pretty much it. I think that it was brought up as to possibly at what time would the first dirt be moved. And I think it was all somewhat discussed about 10 months from now. So that's when we're pretty much looking at having to do something on the grounds to start this process moving. I think everyone is at a point now wherein that we want it to take place. An additional cost, if we were to go to a total metal roof, they quoted in the neighborhood of $3 million added to what we already have. So I think that that's kind of looked down on.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ritchie, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, and I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for my other 8 school board members. But it was presented to us that once we were given the funding for our new school, that this board would be making recommendations or be making decisions on how the school looked. I would assume that would include a roof and doors and grass and trees and this, that, and the other. I just, don't want them to worry themselves. They've got so much else to do. But, again, they funded our school. Now it's up to this board here to decide how that happens. So, again, I don't think we need to be talking about roofs when we don't even have final sketches. I know all that is going to come into play. But again, there's a lot of, all of us here are pretty intelligent people. We've got builders here, other people that have been on school boards prior to us, and we need to be making these decisions and not the Board of Supervisors.
But they're just getting I think they're just going to get an update. They're not asking for necessarily.
That's what I was going to say.
They could give an opinion, but.
I don't think they're trying to overstep their boundary. I think they just want to be aware of what is going on and at what time. And I think we owe that to them. And the meeting went very well. I have no qualms about it. But I agree with you. I understand exactly where you're coming from. But they're not trying to take over. They are merely wanting to know how things are going.
Never make your banker mad.
And as far as comments outside of the items that could require some action, I'd just like to bring it to the board's attention tonight, a few quick things. One is that we had a discussion at the last board meeting specifically about the concerns about Juuls and about the e-cigarettes and issues of that nature. We stated that we would like to have the opportunity to go into the community and begin education process. There will be a public meeting for education purposes related to Juuls and e-cigarettes and our agenda, and our policy and procedures. It will be at Bluestone High School at 6 o'clock on October the 30th. That's a Tuesday night. And then it will be at Parkview High School at 6 o'clock on November the 1st, which is a Thursday night. We will have representatives from health officials as well as from the police department and, of course, school personnel that will be there. I will be there to talk with parents, talk with students, talk with those that are concerned about this issue in our community. And then we will continue to use public sector opportunities, social media and other things to try to get the information out. We are looking to, with the police support, which they are very anxious to do this, be very watchful for these types of things and take appropriate actions as we find them being used in our schools. Again, that's the policies that we have say that there would be no use of these by anyone on school property, and we want to make sure that that's clear as well.
Will the meetings take place in the cafeteria, the library? Do you know yet?
The gyms. The meetings will be
In the
taking
gyms.
place in the gyms. Okay. Along with that as well, we have had concerns about the possibility that is very distinct with these devices for dangerous drugs to get into the usage of those. There have been overdoses related to some of these types of things that the police are using Narcan for, and as a precautionary method, we have asked our school nurses about getting trained and having available Narcan opportunities in our schools in case something tragic should happen. And the nurses are very anxious to move forward with this. We've had that meeting, and they're going to get trained, and we're going to find ways to have that as an option to secure the needs of our students. And I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay.
Any questions? I also wanted to bring to your attention that as we're planning the new schools, there has always been the attention to the number of parents who drive their children to school to let them off at both the middle schools and at the high school level. We are wanting to make sure that we are going to have the appropriate road space for those parents to come in. We don't want to see a duplication of what we've had happen at South Hill Elementary School and trying to follow up on that. And there have been some public comments that I have taken about the whole idea of will parents actually come to the new school? It's a little bit further distance. How many will be coming in at different times? So we are planning to do a survey of those parents that are currently bringing their children to school at the middle school and the high school level at both ends, and asking them to let us know would they be planning to do that as they move forward. And this survey we expect to even go to the elementary school to fifth graders because those students will be a part of it as well. So we're wanting to get some better sense of what the need and the demand will be for parents as they move in that direction. I'd also just like to bring to your attention that we are still in need of bus drivers and cafeteria workers and teachers on that staff. And so as these are critical needs, we are looking for ways, as we had our Finance Committee meeting tonight. It had been my recommendation as we look at the budget goals for the new year that we have an increase in salaries and appropriate changes to our current salary scale. Everyone who spoke at the Finance Committee tonight, I'm sure that you'll bring it up to as well. As the board is looking to make recommendations for the schedule and for the budget for next year, that's obviously the number one concern, that we want to make sure we are able to do this. So I just wanted to bring that up in my notes tonight because it's important. And I also want to particularly speak to all of our staff and to bus drivers and to teachers who have worked with our students through the two crises of hurricanes and weather-related issues that we've had. I know a lot of people are out, have been out of electricity. We will be having school begin tomorrow on time, and we plan to, tomorrow's schedule is for half a day for students, so I think it'll be a way of introducing, getting them back into school half day and then full day for the rest of the time that we'll be working with them. So we appreciate all the support that everybody's been given through that time. Any thoughts on that? That's your green light on.
No, I just have a question when you're done.
Okay, I'm done.
Or with everything?
I think so.
Okay. No, I just had a lot of people asking me, and to my knowledge, this board has not talked about year-round schools, something about a grant that we got for
Yes.
year-round. Could you just clarify that we?
Yes, I did actually put an article in the paper about that issue. The grant that we got, and I mentioned that to us at our last board meeting, was an extended learning grant. And extended learning grants can take a wide variety of shapes. Many schools do use that for year-round school or for additional summer activities that are academic in nature. Our extended learning grant was specifically written with the Southside Youth Development Committee, who has been working with students, particularly students from poverty backgrounds, to try to give them opportunities in the summer to get ahead on several of the issues. Our issue, not our issue, but our opportunities that we're looking at is to give those students at middle school level, particularly additional options for getting engaged with business and understanding careers and where careers are. And so we're very excited to be able to plan for that. It's a $50,000 pilot grant for next year, and if we're able to work it out successfully and get those students engaged in that way, then in following years, we can look at the opportunity of getting more money and working with these students as they make their way through high school. So we have had no conversation about year-round school on board or among administrators at this point.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've heard about that myself.
I'm getting a lot of calls,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
a lot of people read Facebook, but not the paper. So.
Right, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. No, we have not had any conversation about year-round schools as of yet.
Are you finished?
I'm done, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I did. I have, Mr. Jeffers, did you bring back the information? We'll get that from you really quickly that Mr. Honeycutt asked for.
So we worked up after we've missed the first 4 days. So now we've missed 2 more days. So we do have to kind of think about that. I believe, the way our policy is written, the first 5 days are made up one-to-one. And then after that, every 2 days becomes 1 day. So we're kind of on the bubble right now. By adding the 5 minutes back to each of the periods of our secondary schools, that gives us 100-minute blocks instead of 95 minutes. And that gives you, over a 90-day period, 6 extra days that you can work in. So we've hit 6 days, except that it's, we didn't do that the first quarter. So we're really tight on it, and we may have to come back to you and say, we may have to actually go to the state and ask for a waiver at some point about the exact hours. It's very tight right now for the first semester, assuming we don't miss any more days.
Right. Mr. Honeycutt?
And I think the reason why we went back to it last year and cut the time down, because some of the teachers said,
Yes, sir.
we had 1,100 or 1,200 instructional hours.
That's right.
I think we're required to have 990 instructional hours or either 180 days.
You're correct. Both of them, yes.
But I would like to know how many actual instructional hours are built into the calendar for this year, excluding what we've missed as of today.
So that'd be 9,000 instructional, 36,000 instructional hours per semester, per kid, I guess, if you look at it that way, I guess. 3,600, I guess it would be.
No,
Each period would be 9,000 minutes. It's 150 hours with what you would have right now in our seat time. Each period would get 150 seat hours. So we're 10 hours over.
What he's asking is, if we add 20 minutes a day.
Yes, sir.
From now on out, and we don't miss any more days, how many instructional hours will we have at the end of the year? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, total. How many instructional hours?
So,
More than enough.
yeah, we'd have 10 extra hours if you look at it that way. So it's easier to think about maybe the second semester. We'll have 10 extra hours by adding the 20 minutes in for the remainder of the year. So that means we could miss 6 days without hitting our wall.
Mr. Honeycutt, so we don't put him on the spot and he's trying to do all that math right there. I think he should have more time to really give us some data back. I know he's trying to add it and do it right there, but he probably needs more time.
My thing was, before I vote on this, to increase the day.
Yes, sir.
If I know I'm going to have 300 extra hours at the end of the school year, or whatever it is, being
Yes, sir.
out there
Yep.
when I say that, I don't want to make the requirement if it doesn't have to be there. I
Right.
don't want to add the days to the children if it's not necessary. I don't want us to go back and have to redo it again.
I certainly don't either. But your numbers are correct. We're required to have 990 instructional hours in our schedule. This schedule more than meets that, but the issue comes in with the Carnegie units. For our students earn 8 credits in theory in high school. Any high school credit class can earn, so you're looking at a maximum of 8 classes. Our middle school kids can also. So we have to require that our secondary schools that offer a credit-bearing class can meet the 140-hour requirement. Since we have 8 classes, that means we really fill up our time. If you had someone mention a 7th period earlier, that's 7 periods times the shorter length, but for the entire year. So your school days can be shorter and your periods can be shorter if you go that direction. But the 8-period block, we have to certify for each of those 8 periods a student can receive Carnegie credit for. The period has to be at least 100 minutes in our schedule. So when you put 4 of those in one day, that does make for a very full day.
And anytime you bank time in the day to try to secure the opportunity to keep your calendar so that weather-related incidents will not take away, put you in jeopardy. You'll have years that there will be more instructional time than what is actually
Left over.
required by the state. And that's happened in the past over and over and over. The first time we ever had an issue that I can remember was last year when we had the late April snow. And we had that issue that we had to go back to the state and talk with them about how we were going to make that up. And they gave us, because we had banked and we were given the opportunity at that point to include the 5 minutes, they gave us that time without having to go back and have a Saturday or take up time during spring break. Spring break is an issue because we let it be known every year, you know, spring break is here, but if we miss days, we could have to try to do away with it. But everybody makes, not everybody, but many people make vacation plans and do other things. If it's a gamble. Are we going to have too much? Are we going to have too little? But we know we have to have this much. The board could choose to say we'll do the 20 minutes during the fall semester only and not during the spring semester. The elementary schools also go more than is necessary because they're not on the 4x4 block schedule. And so we could say that we won't hold the elementary to that level of time, but we do the secondary. The problem with that is we have so many secondary students who go home and basically are babysitters for their brothers and sisters who are coming in, and there'd be time that elementary would be there longer. So it's a very tough scenario that we face as we deal with
And if we don't
these
have enough
issues.
time, at the end of the year, you end up talking about spring break or coming to school on Saturday, or, you know, to me, those are worse solutions. I would rather have.
And for the fall, we're in a particular, because we need to finish before Christmas. And we've never missed 6 days by this time in the school year before. That's just been a matter of the issue that we have right now. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you.
And the second thing I wanted to check, the information, the quarterly info that we're going to provide to the Joint Education Committee, can we ask that it be brought to this board first? So we know what's going to be presented there?
I will be happy to
That's what we-
tell you what would be presented. I can't tell you what questions they might ask.
No,
but I
I'm
can-
not, I'm not worried about that, but I just would like to know
Absolutely.
also,
We-
get the same update
We will
before.
present to you always.
Mr. Rich, are you asking that our Joint Education Committee as a board meet so this board can be briefed prior to anything going over to the other board? Is that what you're saying? Our Joint
Right.
Education needs to be briefed, and if all board members want to come, we can all hear that information at that point.
So is that, because we talked about this briefly.
Yes.
And is that the way you?
Yeah, I think
Prefer-
as a board,
Coming to the board, to a board meeting?
as our board, I think our board needs to be briefed on where we're at with the project.
Right.
We can do it individually. We don't have to do it as a joint with the Board of Supervisors. Our board, we have our independent Joint Education Committee. And any information that comes up, we can meet. All members can attend. And that way, we're fully briefed on where we're at.
I just thought maybe they could bring it to a regular school board meeting. They're only doing it quarterly, so it seems like it would be easy enough to
Yeah.
bring it.
Either way, as long as we're updated.
All right, well, we could talk about that, see what the
We
board
can
wants.
easily do that. If need be, we can meet prior to the regular meeting, like the finance meeting meets early in the afternoon. We can meet and then give that information to you guys prior to the regular meeting. That's no problem. We can-
Thank you, Mr. Farmer.
Well, from now on out, the school board is going to be ahead of the curve. That what we're going to be doing, we're going to already know what we're going to be telling them. Because the architects are going to be meeting with this full board, not just the educational committee. So we're already going to know probably a month ahead before we go to report to the Board of Supervisors what we're going to talk about. So that agenda will already be set before we go over there anyway. So, because we're the ones that are in the lead right now, not them. That just changed once it's.
I just want to make sure that we were getting the architect's report to us.
Yeah, I mean, the
Because nobody
architects-
came and reported to us about roofs, you know, so, and that's fine.
Because it came from them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we'll move on to our committee reports. I think we've already heard from the Joint Education. Was there anything additional?
No, nothing.
All right. Finance Committee, Ms. Bailey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee met today at 5 p.m. And I want to thank my board members for coming and sharing with our committee your budget requests for this upcoming year. And as Mr. Nichols described, increasing teacher pay to help us with recruitment and retention was a number one item, in addition to increasing salaries for our support staff, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our paraprofessionals, anyone. Ms. Garner did a nice job of describing what those people do for us, and I think that was unanimous request. There were other requests that were made, and they will be in the meeting minutes. If you were not able to report what your requests are, I'm sure Mr. Nichols would still be happy to hear from you regarding those. We also reviewed the bills, and we have a recommendation for you at that time in action. And that's all that I have tonight.
Thank you. School Safety Committee? I'm sorry.
One
go ahead.
comment. I just wanted to thank Mrs. Bugg for coming in and making that presentation this evening and helping us with the bills in Mrs. Pfeffer's absence. Ms. Bacon, I'm sorry. Bacon, thank you.
School Safety Committee?
Yes, we had a meeting last Monday. We were discussing the House Select Committee on school safety, things that we liked, things we didn't like. Of course, the major thing was where's the funding coming from. We also discussed the drug testing policy and some of the features that we're going to have for security in the schools. We also discussed having a larger meeting with more of the law enforcement, fire, rescue, and the architect at that time, because, you know, you got to be able to get to the school if something happens. So we want to make sure that law enforcement, fire, rescue can be there for the safety of our kids.
We appreciate that. The Gifted and Talented? Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add that there will be an action item tonight based on the recommendation of the Safety Committee on the policy part.
Okay.
That's what I amended in the agenda.
Right. Did you want to read that?
At action time.
All right.
Action now.
Will do. All right, Gifted and Talented?
CT.
I'm
The
sorry,
government-
CT. I'm sorry, Ms. Garner, I jumped over CT. Okay, well, there we go. Back to you, Ms. Garner, sorry.
Government School Joint Meeting will be Wednesday, and I've had a request from Mr. Ritchie to investigate adding positions, so I'll look into that. And if anybody else has questions they would like to be brought up, email me before 4 o'clock on Wednesday.
Thank you. Athletic Committee.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. With the number of days that we're missing, some of our sports are having to double their games throughout the week. One of those sports is football, Parkview, and both Bluestone. I think it's important that we give our athletes as much time, recovery time, from one game to the next. I know there's some rescheduling going on, but football is a pretty brutal sport. We just want to make sure that we, in the best interest of our athletes, we give them as much recovery time from one game to another. The other thing is our fishing team. Our fishing team competed in their first fishing tournament, I believe was on the James River. I did not make it, but I think Glenn Edwards did. So,
I did.
Mr. Edwards, if you can share that experience with the board.
I did. We had actually 6 teams participated. One from the Mecklenburg High School Bass Anglers. That was one team. They fished. They had 5 teams from the Mecklenburg High School Anglers. Actually, one of the teams qualified for the state. They came in 3rd. They fished against some 15-year schools that had had fishing teams for 15 years, and one of our teams actually came in 3rd. They automatically qualify for the state tournament, and I think they're checking on it now. They may have already qualified for the national just because of points. So that's the first tournament. The next one will be here on November the 3rd, if the flood goes down and we can get under the bridge. And that will be at Carr Lake, Bugs Island, and they'll fish out of Occoneechee, I think. But this is a great program, and I'm just happy for these kids. And there are more and more kids now that are being interested. They're looking for more boats. They're looking for more coaches, and it really is it's a work of art. It's really coming. So.
And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. for bringing that to us. That was a good one.
Thank you. The Instruction Committee, we did meet after last meeting, and we discussed, which is, you've heard already tonight, teacher salaries, and in hopes of putting together some sort of plan to take to the Board of Supervisors. about how we could raise salaries over time and get caught up to the rest of the region. All right, now we are at our public input session. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody to speak?
Yes, we do. At this time, matters may be publicly brought to the attention of the board and administration. Public comment at board meetings are just one of many avenues for communication, and the board recognizes and appreciates the importance of input from and communication with the public we represent. The public is invited to sign up to speak. The clerk of the school board will write down your name, contact information, and the topic that you wish to speak about. The public is allowed up to 6 minutes at most meetings to express their views. Please respect that time limitation. It will be enforced. Please understand that it may not be possible to immediately respond to questions. As a reminder, it is inappropriate at a public meeting to make personal attacks, to be defamatory, or to disparage individuals or identifiable groups. Again, we welcome and appreciate your input. Prior to beginning your comment, please state your name to the board.
Okay. And let me just add, if I could, before you, to the speakers tonight, to be sure not to disclose any personal information. You can speak about things, but don't, we shouldn't identify any individuals, especially minors. And I've asked the clerk, you have 6 minutes to speak. I've asked her to give you a 1-minute warning so you know you could better wrap up your comments and finish within the 6-minute time limit. Thank you.
I have Sylvia Burchett.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Burchett. I am a bus driver and a school bus trainer for Mecklenburg County.
Mr. Chairman, please. Josh, if somebody could turn that microphone up, please, because I'm deaf on my right ear and I have a hard time hearing.
Now? That better? Okay. It was brought to my attention last Thursday that there was a video posted on Facebook about bullying. And in our county handbook, we do not have anything about bullying, but in our instructor's manual curriculum, we do have some about bullying. It's things to look for, signs to look for, about writing up students, trying to separate them. Now, we do not have anything in there about what to do if. And I am bringing this before y'all because maybe Department of Education could give us some extra training. We do evacuations for emergencies. We do training for that. And they're live active training. So maybe we need to do this for in a situation of someone actually getting hurt. It is no doubt in my mind that each bus driver that we have and the transportation department would do anything to keep a child from getting hurt. We have a lot of good bus drivers, and our transportation department stands behind us. But it's a lack of training. Anything you can push anything with a pencil, but until you can go through it, it's a different story. Years ago, there was nothing even talked about bullies. So drivers that have been there 20, 30, 40 years have no training on this. Also, I'd like to say that when you have a situation and you're there on that bus and you're with those children, when you call back to transportation and you tell them, look, I've got so-and-so going on, it is up to the driver to display that urgency. And not always does every driver see an urgency the same way. I don't feel like anyone would intentionally let anything happen to a child, because most of us have children and we don't want it to happen to our own. Myself, when every child I've got steps on my bus, they are mine. They are mine to the bottom of my heart. And I would take care of them just as I do the ones that I born. It's a lot of bashing. I've had more calls just because I'm a trainer over the weekend, and I have no idea where these people got my number from. It's been parents. It's been, hey, you know, I heard so-and-so, and did you see that video? And it really hurt me. First of all, when I saw the video, it hurt me that a child had to go through that. That child or any other child had to go through that. But there's been calls. What do you know? Well, what can I say other than I don't know? Well, you know, so-and-so should have, and that one shouldn't have, and this should have, and, you know, until you walk in a shoe, you don't know. Until you face what happened, you don't know. There have been people that have gone to the emergency rooms and they walk in and they say, well, you know, I don't feel good today. They go through triage and vital signs are good, and nurses look at them and they say, okay, we're going to put you out in the waiting room because we've got others that are severely injured. And then they may sit out there 45 minutes and boom, they've had a heart attack and died.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay. My point is, I hope that Virginia Department of Education and Mecklenburg County can help inform us more so that what happened will not happen again, and to take a bad situation and turn it good. I'm going to talk to Mr. Mayhew, and he is, anytime I've taken anything to him, he has been really wonderful, and he'll always tell me, give me your ideas, I'll see if I can have them approved. But I am asking that you give us more to work with so that we can maybe keep this from happening to this extent again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Troy Bowers.
Good afternoon. My name is Troy Bowers. I'm a parent at, or a student at Bluestone Middle, and I have a question concerning a word that I keep hearing a lot, policy. And one of the main policies that I think the school system has throughout the county is cell phone usage in class, in the school. If it's a policy and it's not enforced, it's not a policy. So my question to you all, if someone wants to take it, is why is it allowed if it's a policy that is not to be used? My child is a student at Bluestone Middle, so I'm concerned. If it impedes his ability to learn, because everyone in the class is using them, but it's a policy of this board that they don't use them, not even in school, answer my question as to why it's allowed. Impeding my child's ability to learn, to get along in school. So maybe you, Mr. Nichols, or you, Mr. Campbell, can tell me why that policy is not enforced, since I know you all are sticklers for policy, especially you, sir. Can you tell me? Phone use with students in Mecklenburg County schools. I just need to know why you all allow that to happen. Because I teach over there sometimes, and I see it in every student, everywhere. And it's a policy, big letters in the school. No phone zone. But everybody's using them. Tell me why. As a parent, a lot of parents come to me because of whatever position that I have publicly and ask me to speak to you all about why the school board, the principals, and everyone else in these schools allow these students to do whatever they want when it comes to phone usage, unauthorized phone usage. So, when my kid comes to me and says, well, everybody's doing it. Well, what's the policy? I want to know what the policy is. I like that word policy. So tell me, what is the policy? Mr. Nichols.
The procedure that we have says that
Excuse me, sir. I need to know the policy first, then the procedure.
the policy that we are working with is saying that the students should not be using the cell phones in classrooms without having a teacher giving guidance to when they would be in a position to be able to do that. Some of the smartphones, as you probably very well know, have other tools that are available for them to use, but they're not looking for them to be able to use them for communication or other types of things.
So why are they allowed to do it?
So you're saying with teacher permission, in those cases, they can use them?
And then I would really like to know the reasons why that would be allowed, because I haven't seen a reason why a kid needs to have a cell phone, texting everybody, making meetings, bullying and everything. I just can't see a reason why a student should have a phone in the class. I can't. Tell me. If you can rationalize it to me and make me think that it's okay and fine, tell me why. So my kid, I can go to my kid and say, hey, it's okay. Just look straight ahead. Don't worry about the left, the right, the front, the back. Plow ahead. Is that what I'm supposed to tell him?
I can only tell you that.
Maybe one of your board members can tell me. They set the policy.
If
Maybe
you ask him
Mr.
a
Campbell
question,
can tell me. He
Sir.
sets the policy.
Sir, if you ask him a question, you should give him
Okay,
a
Mr.
chance
Richard.
to answer. You cut him off.
All right, I'm
He
sorry.
started to answer your question, and
I'm
you
sorry.
cut him off.
I'm sorry, I'm waiting.
And you said that every student was using them in the middle school, and that's not true, because I have a daughter in the middle school that doesn't even own a phone.
When's the last time you were in the class, sir? I was there last
Well, I'll
week.
tell you, my daughter doesn't have a cell phone.
I was there last week in the class. When was the
And
last time
saw
you were there?
Every single student using
I'm saying 90%.
Okay, well, 90% now.
Okay, you want to be a stickler about that little
Now,
detail?
Mr.
That's
Mr.
fine.
Nichols, were you going to answer his question?
It,
Did you want to answer his question?
Yes. The appropriate use of smartphones is a significant question of disciplinary issues all over the nation. There has been much discussion on this board about how to put in our discipline handbooks and other things for use of the phones. I'm sure it's an issue like so many others that you put things in policy or you put things in disciplinary code and students just march right through it. When principals often have tried to keep all students from using them, from having them in school, then you're here tonight saying, why is it allowed? We have had parents that have come to the very podium where you are and said, I will have my children have a phone in school because I want to have access to my child while they're in there.
Excuse me, we have
Students,
1 minute left.
parents, oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so parents basically usurp your policies.
We have a number of scenarios where parents saying they absolutely will have cell phones.
And the ones that don't, what do we do with them?
Applaud them for sticking with what our expectations are.
Okay, so then we should go back to the policy, right? Not the practice. That's all I wanted to know. When y'all were talking in your closed meeting before how sticklers you're on policy, I just want the policy followed. Or maybe some people who are like-minded, they want the policy followed. But I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Justin Rittenberry.
Hello, my name is Justin Rittenberry, and I am 12 years old. I want to thank everyone for their prayers. My faith in God and the prayers of this community is what has helped me during this difficult time. My biggest thank you goes to the CNA student on the bus. You are the one who helped me when no one else would. Since this happened, I have been in pain. I have felt hurt, sad, and angry. I do not ever want to ride another bus again. The student who did this to me was older and bigger, and the bus driver did not acknowledge the severity of the situation. I was scared and hurt and just wanted to get off the bus. I can remember every light in town that was red and the ones that were green. The red light seemed to stay red forever. I could feel my face swelling and burning, and I could not stop my nose from bleeding. I texted my mom because I didn't know what else to do. I'm asking you all, the people who have the power to change things, to please make it where no one else has to sit on a bus with someone who has beaten them. Please make a policy where the bus driver has to stop and call for help for those who are injured. I have been pricked on all throughout school for stuttering, for wearing glasses, the way I dress, the way my hair looks, and for making good grades. And I know I am not the only one. Bullying has to stop. I am angry this happened to me, but Derek has told me I need to use this experience to help others so they won't have to go through what I did. I pray that God will change the heart of the kid who did this to me so that he can know that violence is never okay. I also pray for the bus driver. I want her to know that I forgive her for not helping me, but I hope that in the future she will better protect her children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mildred Hendrick.
Good evening. I'm Mildred Hendrick, Justin Rittenberry's mother. This attack on my son has been one of the most horrific things I've ever endured. What saddened me the most is the fact that the bus driver didn't do anything. I entrusted the care of my child to Mecklenburg County Public Schools, and they failed. Most certainly you all are not responsible for the attack. However, the lack of a procedure being followed is unacceptable. Someone should have notified me immediately. Medical attention should have been sought for my child. An emergency release card was completed and signed by me at the beginning of the school year. I thought the purpose of these cards was to allow the school system to seek treatment for injured children. That was not the case this time. The fact that this bus driver continued her route, even letting the kid who attacked my son off the bus at his home first, is unacceptable. Someone who shows this type of violence by the injuries that my son sustained should have been immediately removed from the bus. What was treated like a normal Friday afternoon bus ride was far from that. My child sustained several breaks in his nose and a concussion. And a CNA student was put in charge to take care of him, not the adult bus driver. I asked that a policy and procedure be put in place that requires law enforcement be called on any kid that assaults another child. And then EMS be called for any child that suffers an injury. That the bus be mandated to pull over at the nearest safest location and make those calls. My child is having nightmares, screaming and fighting in his sleep. He does not want to ride a bus or go back to school. And this is a kid who likes school and makes good grades. He doesn't feel safe or protected. My child has had to overcome many obstacles which has been out of his control. Justin sees the world differently than you and I. He was diagnosed with high-functioning autism at age 4. So everything we have worked for him to overcome is gone. His ability to trust people, to adapt to his surroundings, to feel safe outside of his family and close friends. We now have to rebuild. No child should ever feel scared to go to school. In Mecklenburg County, there are many that do. Please, let's work together to make a safe environment for our kids. They are our future, and they deserve it.
Thank you.
Derek Hazelwood.
Good evening, school board. Good evening, Mr. Nichols. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here. Do you hear that? That's silence. And that's a lot of what teachers, students, bus drivers, and parents are doing because they realize no matter what they say or do, it matters. Since I made the Facebook video that the bus driver was speaking about, I've been contacted by tons and tons of people. Those who wish to remain anonymous because they are employees of Mecklenburg County school systems, from parents and students. I've been contacted by those who rode that bus that Justin were on, talking about how they've been bullied all year, and they've told the driver about those things. I know there's a problem. It's a big problem. And the problem of it is not our procedures. It's not our manuals. It's more than just the school board. It's more than just the teachers, but it's also how parents react. I know there were days of which teachers used to actually have kids scare their parents that when they got home that they would be punished. But now teachers get parents after them because of the simple fact that their kid did something wrong. What's wrong with the teacher? That's not the case. A lot of it starts at home. But the problem I do have is that when something like this happens, to a smaller degree, it's pushed under the rug because of policies, procedures, how many times a child has to be written up, or things that have to be done before they really reach real disciplinary action. One student told me about her being groped. She told me about her being pinched. She told me about the things that have happened to her and said to her sexually. In the whole Me Too movement right now, we don't need adults that just are saying Me Too, but we have children in our schools that are saying that right now. And what's happening? Nothing. Because they aren't seeing it. Because it has to happen. One student told me that they know that really nothing much is going to happen to them. That they will have referrals, that they will continue to happen, but they can stay in school. I also know that I did not actually know until recently that there's an alternative school in Mecklenburg County, but it's pretty much to capacity at the moment. All night long I've heard you guys say one thing: policy, procedures, and money. I wish I had a checkbook big enough to write you the check that you needed to do the job efficiently, but I do not. This county may not, but something has to happen. I respect you're talking about a roof and about landscaping, but as I said in my Facebook video, you're talking about rebuilding the house when your current house is on fire. First, the fire department has to be called and put out the problems that we have now. I'm on your side, but I'm also fed up. I'm with you. I believe in you. You were elected for a reason. Your constituents spoke. Now listen to them. But the problem about it is too many of those are silent because they believe nothing will happen. There's a voice of people out there who are scared to talk because of being further bullied. I have student after student after student in my Facebook inbox right now that are telling stories that I will not tell in public. You know, you see when people are promoting the county and all the stuff that they're doing, we are Mecklenburg. We are proud. You'll love the view from here, South Hill says. I'm pretty disgusted with the view from here. So what can be done? I don't have an answer. You probably don't either. You've probably been searching for this for a long time, but in searching for the answer, the problem gets worse. You know, I believe sometimes we don't exactly know what to do when we have paralysis by analysis. I'm sorry, this is the first time I've been to this board meeting. I have children in Mecklenburg County schools and will for a long time. Only one's in second grade, one hasn't gone to kindergarten yet, and then another one is only 3. I have a vested interest in this. I thank God for the bus driver who said I would not want anything to happen to anybody's child that I had care, custody, and control over.
Excuse me, you have 1 minute left.
But the problem of it is not everyone is awesome as this lady right here. So what do? I don't know. But I have started an initiative called Project One Voice. And that one voice is for students and parents and teachers to be able to speak up and actually something happen. I said in my Facebook video, and I'll say it again, lots of times it's he who speaks the loudest is finally heard. These kids that have sent message to me in my inbox, teachers that have sent messages to my inbox, bus drivers that have sent messages in my inbox, this lady right here who has spoke about the lack of policies and procedures in the handbook, they have a voice and he's standing in front of you, and I refuse to shut up until something is done. I appreciate you. I appreciate every one of you. I'm on your side. And from here forward, we will make a difference with one voice, united.
Thank you.
Jasper Powell.
Afternoon.
Mr. Powell.
I'm Jasper Powell, and I am a school bus driver for Mecklenburg County. I have some suggestions for you all. I don't know if you'll listen. I hope you do. Suggestions are we need drivers. Bad. Can't any of us get sick and call in because we don't have a replacement. A question that I have is, who runs the bus? School board, Mecklenburg County laws, Virginia laws, or the student himself or herself? As a driver, I've got the best bus in Mecklenburg County. I've got proof of that sitting right up there amongst you all, because one person has been there and heard what goes on. Maybe the children become our responsibility when they step on that bus. When they step off of it at school, then they are the teachers. When they step back on it in the afternoon, the hours until my kids get to the sidewalk or out of a public highway. I don't move the bus for their safety. The parents should know all of this, because they're not just at school to learn. The parents need to know that these kids are in school from the time they get on the bus until the time they get off. The drivers need more power. Let the school bus drivers grade them on their report cards. Little Johnny gets A on math, he gets A on English, he gets A on science, he gets A on phys ed. But the times he's been wrote up, once, twice, which shouldn't be at all, he gets a C or a D. Mom and Daddy wants to know, well, that can't be right, because now little Johnny's not a straight A honor roll student anymore. Can you all change that? I mean, can you change the way we grade them rather than just the teachers in the school? Or is it a state law that is you got to follow? I don't know. I'm asking you. The reason for our shortage in drivers basically is applicants that apply for jobs, if you can get them to apply, they know how the kids are on the bus. That's the reason they don't want to take the responsibility, because they don't have any control over them. You write a kid up, what do they do? Oh, he's been like that ever since he was in kindergarten. If they know this, why are they letting him on the bus to be the one that upsets the whole bus? You know, this I don't understand. I've been driving a school bus off and on for the last 45 years. I have seen this program go downhill like a runaway snowball. I mean, it's on a runaway track right now. It's nowhere close, because the kids are raising themselves and they're not getting it at home. You all have got to help us. Help us. I don't think that it would be a driver here that wouldn't ask the same thing. I'm sure she does. Help us. That's the only way we can get out of this. I have one more question. We have a limit on the school buses.
You're at 1 minute, sir.
Okay? In the mornings on my bus, I am overloaded. I'm not going to give you figures, but I've got proof of it on my daily worksheet. In the afternoon, I've got 10 more than I had in the morning. I've got 3 kids on every seat in that bus, including the 2 back ones, which nobody should be on at all for safety reasons. My question is, if I'm involved in a wreck, they're going to protect the man at the top and work right down the line to me. Get us some help, get us some buses. I don't think that money would buy the bus drivers that would want to come out there and help. We've got to have more backing from the school board. Help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
That's everyone.
All right. Okay, we've now reached our action items. Action item A. Do I have a motion that the school board approves the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on September 24th, 2018?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Abstain.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. We have a recommendation from the Finance Committee to pay the bills. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, you have the record.
Yes. We got that early.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. And do I have a motion that the school board approves the amended personnel recommendations for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Garner, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. In reference to student matter 2018-2019-04, the recommendation is that the school board approves the discipline matter recommendation starting regarding student matter SD 2018-2019-04 to place a high school student at the Alternative Learning Center for the remainder of the fall semester. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion for Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board approves the 2018-2019 overnight field trips for Clarksville Elementary, Chase City Elementary, and Parkview Middle School?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, seconded by Ms. Garner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board adopts the school board objectives?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Roll call, please. Or was it Mr. Sturtevant?
Mr. Sturtevant.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sturtevant was the second. Just heard it.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. May I have a motion that the school board approves extending the instructional school day 20 minutes?
So moved.
Question.
Yes.
Are we going to say that that is for the fall semester, or are we saying all year?
Okay, so that's the school.
Recommendation is for the year.
Right, so it should read, let me reread that then. The school board approves the extending the instructional school day 20 minutes for the remainder of the school year.
Okay. And I still have a concern, and I keep hating to beat this, but I still have a concern that last year we had over 1,200 hours built in, instructional hours built into our school calendar, and that's why we changed the day this year. And if we have 990 hours and we ended up with that, again, I don't want to push our children into being at school longer than what they have to be at school.
All right. And I had the motion by Mr.
Yes.
Palmer, and who seconded that?
Mr. Johnson.
All right, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
Abstain.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Random drug testing policy, which reads, it is the recommendation of the school board safety committee that the school board direct the administration to bring to this board for consideration a policy to support our desire to continue random drug testing for illegal or inappropriate drugs for students participating in extracurricular activities that we may review and potentially adopt at our November meeting. Does
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards to accept that?
Second.
Second from Ms. Garner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. All right, may I have a motion that the school board approves the update to VSBA policy A, B, C, E, G, I, K, and L? And these were presented last month.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt,
Second.
second from Ms. Bailey. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. Okay, reminders. October 16th, school dismisses at noon, half-day teacher workday. October 24th, parent-teacher conferences, elementary schools from 4:15 to 6:30. On the 25th, parent and teacher conferences at the middle schools from 4:15 to 6:30. On the 30th of October, parent meeting at Bluestone High School regarding e-cigarettes and Juuls beginning at 6 p.m. November 1st, parent meeting at Parkview High School regarding e-cigarettes and Juuls beginning at 6 p.m. And on November 6th, Professional Development Day, no school for students. The 21st and through the 23rd of November is the Thanksgiving Day holiday, and the schools will be closed. Now we are to our board member remarks. Let me start over, if I may, with Ms. Garner.
I'll start. I would like to thank all the principals for encouraging their kids to come out for the STEM lab at the fair, and also commend the CTE program with their ag science. I think they had wonderful exhibits.
Thank you, Mr. Sturtevant.
No comment.
Mr. Johnson.
First of all, I want to say to the young man that spoke tonight, well, you're in my prayers, and I'll be praying for you. And I do want to see something take place. I don't know exactly what the answers is. If you watch the news and what's going on in Congress, they don't have the answers. But I'm just going to pray that the God would give us the answers. That's the first step. I also want to say I thank Sylvia for speaking. I've been knowing her for a long time, and she operates a tight ship, no question about that. And I'm a substitute bus driver. My mother was a bus driver for many years, and on my days off, I substitute bus drive. And that being a substitute is very hard because you're driving different buses with different kinds of kids, different directions. But that's one thing that I've learned in driving the bus and substituting with these kids is you usually speak to them when they come up on the bus, and it sort of breaks the ice. And I've had kids get on the bus that are hard, and I've had the bus driver say, well, how did you get him to laugh, or how did you get him to talk? Well, I learned one thing in life. Don't sit back and wait for them to talk first. You talk first. You start the conversation. And I appreciate all of our bus drivers and everything that they do. They have a hard job. Try it sometime. And I appreciate Mr. Mayhew and everything that he does. I've viewed videos with him of incidences happening on school buses, and he's got his hands full. And I just want to thank him for that, thank him for all the bus drivers. And young man, I will be praying for you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Bailey?
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Dalton for the efforts over at Bluestone Middle School cleaning up that tank and getting that hauled away, and also coming up with an alternative heating plan for that school for this winter, because we're going to need it very soon. And thank you for all the work there. I also just want to remind the public that our school board is really, we only do a few things, and I'm reminded of this often. We hire and fire our superintendent. Because I think we all need to be reminded of this from time to time. We hire and fire the superintendent. We are in charge. We develop a budget, and we pass the budget, and we make sure that we don't overspend the budget, and we develop policy. And I know that that's kind of an ugly word tonight, but really that's what we do. And the implementation of that policy rests with our superintendent and his staff. And thus we hire or fire the superintendent. But that's what we do as a board. We need to take that seriously as a board. It is important to us. We are guided by the Code of Virginia, and we're also guided by the Department of Education to make sure our policy is what it should be. And after listening to public input tonight, I think that we can improve on that. And I did ask for a copy of the bus driver handbook, and I'm going to be studying that. And with your help, Ms. Burchett, I hope we can really tighten that up and make it, we want to empower our employees to be the best trained staff out there. And that's what we do, to make them better, so that our kids can have the best education possible. I want to thank all the people who spoke tonight, especially you, Justin. I mean, you know, how can you have surgery and then show up here and do all that? That's pretty amazing. Thank you very much. And just one other little thing here. Each of you have one of these. This is a very rudimentary brochure that was developed in 2 days because I needed something to take to West Virginia to promote our school system. Mr. Nichols and Paula helped me. And what I'd really like to see with this is and I've talked with Mr. Cyphers, our marketing students, to kind of take this and run with it and make it better and clean it up and make it look professional. And maybe we can find some money in our administration budget to print a nice glossy that we can use to promote our school system. And just my last thing, and I'll be quick. Parents, talk with your children about what bullying is. And children, don't tell your parents, Mom, please don't say anything. we don't know, we can't do anything about it. And parents, be persistent. School board, it kind of starts with us. Let's set the bar for civility and how we treat one another. And just a reminder, any physical or verbal threats are not tolerated on any level, no matter how trivial or superficial. And it is our responsibility to provide a safe environment for our staff and our students, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards.
Justin, you're a brave young man. I've been, this thing has really bothered me since it happened. I've been looking at it. I've been searching myself because I don't know what I would have done if it had been my son. I couldn't have taken it probably as well as you did. Something's got to be done, and it's time for us to stop talking and stop preaching and stop making policy, but we got to make something that works.
Yes.
And if we have to work with this man with his Project One Voice, let's do something. Let's get some parents together. Let's get this community together, and let's straighten this mess out. It's out of hand, and it's been out of hand. It didn't just happen with this superintendent. It's been going downhill. I've been on the school board for 15 years. I'm going into my 16th one, and it's been going downhill before I got here. And it gets worse every day because the parenting is a problem, and the state and federal government ties everybody's hands to the point you're afraid you'll get sued and you'll be in court if you say anything to anybody. But we can make policy on a local level, and let's be a little bit different than everybody in the state of Virginia or the United States of America. Let's have a safe place for these kids. And let's make it so these bus drivers have enough power to stop the bus, call the parent, and take the kid off the bus if that's what we have to do. But let's let it be known to everybody in this county that we're not going to play this game anymore. It's over, and let's start right now, today, not tomorrow, and let's just get it done. And I look forward to working with all of you people to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer.
Sylvia, I'm very proud of you. For those who don't know, we go way back. And I'm very proud of the young man, his family, and all in whom have spoke tonight. We can't make changes unless we hear from you guys. Once you let us know your feelings, then we are obligated to move on that. So I thank you for coming. I really appreciate that. I'm sorry in some cases we couldn't give you the answer you wanted tonight, but it is our policy in most cases that we hear what you're saying, we discuss it, and then we proceed to make moves on it. So thank everyone who's came out tonight, and trust me, we heard what you were saying.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
No comment. Everybody said everything I was going to say.
Mr. Honeycutt?
I'd like to echo what Mr. Edwards said. And this goes to the administrators in the building, all of you who are looking. It starts tonight. If there are bullies in your school, get them out. Don't smack them on the hand. Don't, oh, we're going to do this time. There is no place for bullies in Mecklenburg County Public Schools. You get them out of the schools. And again, that's our administrators in our building. You've got to get them out of the schools. Jacob, thank you for what it took for you to come this evening to stand up here and speak. I don't know how you did it. Derek, all of the ones who came out and spoke tonight, Jasper. It starts with us, and it starts tonight. No more excuses. Well, we should have done this, and legislature's tying our hands to do that. We can set a precedence in Mecklenburg County. No more bullies in our schools. End of story, period.
Thank you, Mr. Honeycutt. And I'd like to just point out that in this past budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Nichols, we did request additional spots in alternative education, and we did request behavioral therapists to help the students to learn to adjust their behavior as young as the elementary school, trying to get them early, and it was not funded.
That is correct.
So the central office did see the need for that, but the process for doing that is to make the requests. We request what we need. That's what Mr. Nichols always says. We're bound to do, and we did request that, and it wasn't funded. So I don't want you to think that we're not doing anything, and requested, I'm sure, again,
Yes, we will.
this year. So, all right, we have, let's see, the last action item is, may I have a motion that the school board convenes a closed meeting again for student matters regarding student discipline pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.23711A2. I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant. Roll call, please. I'm sorry. Well, we'll have the break after this vote. Everybody will have to leave, and we can take a break then before we do what we have to do. So may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. And thank you all for coming tonight.